turmeric from there occasionally. So the powder's just dehydrated, and then some of the fibers removed. But I think the powder makes a lot of sense. And when you think again about that goddess, golden goddess, and all that information, intelligence in the whole plant, to me, the spice is very compelling versus the pills. But I do take pills as well. Actually, it's more convenient, so I do that more often than not.
But
Sliced and fermented cultured vegetables is a good way to do it, yeah. Yeah, I think you probably would. Not all of them, but certainly I think, yeah, that's probably one thing you might lose. Yeah, yeah,
Did I hear you mention to avoid grains except for rice that you said earlier?
yeah. My
Could
claim
you talk
to
about
fame,
the avoid grains?
my claim to notoriety was writing this little essay called The Dark Side of Wheat, and it got into just how dark the real history of wheat's penetrance into Western culture, really what it involved, with like the Roman Empire being called the Wheat Empire, and using the wheat economy to dominate the ancient world, and basically giving people free bread to, it's like giving people fluoride, and then the bread and circus model, politically entertain them to death with their devices, Netflix, and everyone's bloated and sick, and they're not going to rebel against you. So that's why we're the new Roman culture, we're the same, and that's why wheat has been, secular and religious traditions alike, been glorified, when in fact it's one of the most toxic things on the planet, and not just because of post-harvest desiccants like Roundup being used, but because of its intrinsic, there's 23,000 different proteins identified in wheat. They're disulfide bonded, many of them, which are almost impossible for the human to break down. We actually elect from this background of trillions of bacteria, a number of them to degrade those for us, some of which, like Clostridium, are very toxic to us, Klebsiella. So, yeah, you can go on and on about wheat being bad, but generally the idea is because we've only been consuming it for a nanosecond in biological time. 10,000 years seems like forever. We should just eliminate them entirely, or go for the pseudograins, which are consistent with the sort of the forager model that was millions of years old. Quinoa, buckwheat, amaranth could, in theory, incorporate. Otherwise, tuber vegetables are an excellent way to get that kind of carbohydrate in our bodies. And I think the paleo movement errs on the side of not enough of that kind of carbohydrate. Yes.
I have a question about turmeric.
Yes.
I was reading a natural news article recently where they were saying that you would take turmeric and if you add a little bit of pepper, it'll help the absorption. What other spices, foods, where you take it in conjunction with something else where you can help reap more of the benefits?
It's tough to say. I mean, the truth is these spices are powerful medicines, and not everyone is going to, respond great to them. So although in talking them up, you still have to be careful. So it's going to depend on the person. It's a real art and science. But when it comes to ginger, is a huge, I love it. I think, and actually, if you get a chance to listen to Dean's talk and talk to him, he's a master herbalist. He knows infinitely more about this topic than me. But I will say these are very powerful substances, like pepper. I just have so much respect for them. They were often, worth their weight in gold, and whole countries fell or rose to power based on their access to spices. There was a reason for that. We know now these spices could save us from the plague. They can save us from Ebola. They can do, oh gosh, I hope the FDA mole isn't in here. I'll be in jail later. But it's the truth. Now we're realizing, thankfully the science says that, not Sayer G, that it's powerful. And I think we have another 7 minutes. Yes?
Back to the juicing versus blending question again. I've been told that when you're in a healing crisis, if you've got a major disease like stage 3, 4 cancer, that you really want to do more juicing instead of the blending, because the juicing has a nutrient concentration that's more beneficial, and you're giving your body a rest from digestion.
I would agree, generally speaking. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Gerson therapy, and they use, up to 15 glasses of vegetable juice daily to put things like, a malignant melanoma into remission, like 50-something% success rate. So yeah, it's I think a good idea. What you're saying is true. Yeah. Anyone? Oh, yes, ma'am, in the back. Oh, sorry.
With juicing, a lot of people add carrots to their juicing.
Yeah.
However, However, carrots have so much sugar
Yeah,
in
good
them,
question.
and sugar feeds cancer. So if you're trying to juice for, say,
Yeah.
cancer, is it still a good idea to use carrots in your juicing?
Fascinating question. It's so bio-individualized, and I have the great honor of being colleagues with Nicholas Gonzalez. And this question came up recently in a panel in New York that I was on, and he does use high levels of for specific cancer cases because it's effective. And my theory is that they do this with actually trying to diagnose cancer. They'll bind a glucose analog with radioactive substance to suck into the tumor. They can see it. Well, if sugar is also being it's co-present with beta carotene and some of the other compounds we don't yet know, the information part we talked about that might you know educate the cancer to chill out or go away or become something more differentiated and healthy. Who knows? So there's always exceptions. So generally, yes, fructose, for example, industrial GMO corn derived, one of the most toxic and oncogenic substances on the planet. There was a recent study that proved finally that it's not a byproduct of cancer that the metabolism shifts towards taking in sugar, but that sugar can induce the cancer phenotype. And so now we're seeing it very differently. But that's different, because again, fructose as an isolate purified is just mind-numbingly barbaric, versus if you get even agave in its natural form. I did a review of the literature. I was shocked to find there was nothing evil ever printed about it. Because I was always of the belief, and I still don't do agave, I think it's too sweet, that it's just as bad as high fructose corn syrup. It's like 90% fructose by weight. But because of the molecular information, I think that's how we can explain the difference qualitatively.
Is there any truth to too many cruciferous vegetables causing thyroid problems?
Yeah, they have goitrogens, which unfortunately, there are chemical ones that are even in organic food, like perchlorate. But yeah, they have naturally occurring biomolecules that will block the thyroid's iodine receptor. But the way you get around that, it's like those in Asia that eat tofu, same thing, is that they'll always have high levels of things like seaweed. They'll get 100 times more iodine than us in theory. So it's always about balance. And and thyroid cancer is one of the most overdiagnosed on the planet. So if you have had a diagnosis or you're preparing to get one, just read the literature first, because you will have your thyroid removed, even blasted with radioactive 131 iodine when it's a benign lesion based often on iodine deficiency. And it's just very scary what's happening globally when it comes to thyroid cancer.
What is your...
I would say in food form, yes.
How do you feel about wheatgrass, and how many times a week do you think we should have a shot of it?
It's remarkable because I'm an anti-wheat guy. In fact, in my essay, The Dark Side of Wheat, I look at 37 days after you sprout a wheat seed, it produces high concentrations of wheat germ agglutinin, the lectin that causes irritation and other adverse effects at the tip where it might get eaten by a predator, and at the root. And so, however, that's what's been so enlightening for me with GreenMedInfo is the research on wheatgrass, for example, in the old dog model of cataracts, completely reversing lens opacity just through giving them wheatgrass powder, like literally reversing cataracts. So I have to give credit to the reality, which is that we know some things, but we really don't know much of anything. And there's always an exception. And so I don't like wheatgrass sometimes, and I used to be at a health food store where wheatgrass we served people, and I would take it sometimes. Sometimes I want to throw up. Cats will eat, grass too, as an emetic to throw up. So I don't know. I'd say probably it has far more good than bad, and certainly the gluten's removed. Well, that's a good thing. But there is still the problem with wheat lectin that's still found in the plant, because the plant wants to live. It doesn't want the cows to eat all of the plants. So. Just 2 minutes, yes.
Two questions. First of all, on rice, how do you feel about that? I think it was presented, but I
Rice.
didn't really hear a clear answer on that.
Mm.
And second thing, what is your viewpoint on sprouting and using that within cooked food for people who have digestion issues?
Wait, rice did you say?
Well, the first question was on rice.
Oh, rice,
If
yeah.
that's one of the better grains that you could try
Yeah.
to have.
Well, there's a lot of discussion about this in the paleo community. A colleague of mine, Dr. Kelly Brogan, educated me to the fact that it will be digested like white rice cold into butyrate, fatty acid in the gut, And also, I know with the whole arsenic issue, brown rice is a big liability because it's in the outside that it concentrates. And I've given my children like brown rice, think it's better. And sometimes, like I actually had Bella, my 6-year-old, throw up once, and I thought that was why. But you know, the glycemic index and its like insulin releasing properties, I'd say moderation is definitely the key. But yeah, it is still within the class of grains, cereal grasses. So I would say, yeah, I mean, if you apply the perfectionistic principle to eating, it's so biologically harmful on some level. And on the other hand, you know, we're threatened with death now based on what we are or not eating. So it's a very hard time to live. So have some compassion for yourself and good luck out there. That's all I can say.
Okay, sorry, quick second question was about sprouts. One of the things I have an issue with is my digestive system. So
Yes.
what I do is, in order to get my veggies kind of more concentrated, I grow my own sprouts and I put that with my cooked food and some rice to help bind everything.
Yes.
So does that seem like a kind of a logical solution for somebody who has a compromised system?
I think so. I do think sprouts, based on the research on wheatgrass, for example, still are weaponized to a degree. They have lower phytate, and there's things that are removed, but I think you could, I just don't know. That's a really good question. I mean, the sprouts of broccoli have something like, 300 times more beneficial sulforaphane than mature broccoli, so there's something about sprouts that have so much power benefit. Yeah, I don't know, I'm sorry. Oh, and then I think, one last question, then we'll end. I'm sorry if we're holding anyone up. Oh my God, my view on the fish. Oh my life. Well, I would just say if you acknowledge the reality, the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room of Fukushima and Chernobyl before that, and just nuclear fallout from our reality.